I know where you live, and I'm going to get you.
When Henry Winkler first walked into his Happy Days audition, creator Gary Marshall took one look at him and thought, I wanted a tall, handsome blonde. And in walked a short, dark-haired actor. And then that short, dark-haired actor went on to become one of the most iconic characters in television history. Television is a strange beast. Networks spend millions of dollars developing shows, hiring writers, crafting storylines, and sometimes the character who ends up saving the whole thing wasn't even supposed to stick around. Today, we're looking at performers who showed up as guest stars, recurring players, or minor characters, and somehow ended up becoming the beating heart of their shows. These are the people who weren't in the original plan, but without them, some of our most beloved sitcoms might have faded into obscurity. 7. Henry Winkler as Fonzie. Happy Days. When Happy Days premiered in January 1974, it was a nostalgia trip about wholesome teenagers in 1950s Milwaukee. The star was Ron Howard, fresh off the Andy Griffith Show, playing the all-American teenager Richie Cunningham. And then there was this other guy. Arthur Herbert Fonzarelli had exactly 6 lines in the pilot. 6. ABC was so nervous about the character that they didn't even want him wearing a leather jacket. Executives feared it would make him look like a criminal. So during the first season, Henry Winkler wore windbreaker jackets instead, one of which was green. Eventually, Gary Marshall negotiated a compromise. Fonzie could wear leather, but only in scenes with his motorcycle. So Marshall did what any clever producer would do. He wrote that motorcycle into nearly every scene. There was just one small problem. Henry Winkler didn't actually know how to ride a motorcycle. He almost crashed it the first time he tried, and after that, he never actually rode it. Again during the series. But here's where things get interesting. During the first season, Happy Days was doing fine, ranking number 16 in the Nielsen ratings. Then came season 2, and the show started losing viewers to Good Times, the All in the Family spin-off airing in the same time slot. ABC was getting nervous. The show was struggling to stay in the top 50. Meanwhile, something else was happening. Field reports were coming in that wherever Henry Winkler went, huge crowds were gathering. Ron Howard later wrote in his memoir about a publicity tour where over 20,000 people gathered at the Neiman Marcus flagship store in Dallas, most of them screaming, Fonzie! By December 1974, the producers made their move. Season 2, Episode 13, became the first episode where Fonzie was the central protagonist. The show also switched from single-camera filming to a live studio audience format. And the audience went absolutely wild. They exploded with applause every time Fonzie made an entrance. Fans started lining up outside the Paramount lot weekly hoping to get seats. ABC executive Fred Silverman was so impressed that he wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. This did not go over well. Ron Howard threatened to leave the series if that happened. And remarkably, Winkler himself argued against it, telling executives, "The show is about my relationship with the family. You take me away from the family. You don't have much." ABC backed down, and instead, Fonzie moved into an apartment above the Cunningham garage, literally and symbolically, giving him a seat at the dinner table. By 1976-77, Happy Days was the #1 program on television. Winkler received 3 consecutive Emmy nominations and won Golden Globe Awards in both 1977 and 1978. Fonzie's leather jacket eventually ended up in the Smithsonian, where curator Eric Jensch noted, Fonzie was a representation of cool at a time when you were learning about what cool was. And if you want to know just how much things had changed from that 6-line pilot, here's a story. At Christmas 1975, ABC gave identical wallets to the entire Happy Days cast. Everyone got the same gift. Everyone except Henry Winkler, who received a VCR worth thousands of dollars. Message received. 6. Robin Williams as Mork. Happy Days to Mork and Mindy. Speaking of Happy Days, The show didn't just save itself with Fonzie. It also launched one of the most legendary comedy careers in history through a single guest appearance. In 1978, Gary Marshall's son had just seen Star Wars and wanted his dad to do an Alien episode. The result was My Favorite Orkin, which aired on February 28, 1978. The original plan was to cast Roger Rees or Dom DeLuise as the alien Mork, but both passed. Then Roger Rees, who had apparently been cast, abruptly quit before filming, leaving production in a crisis just 3 days before shooting. Enter Robin Williams. Al Molinaro, who played Al on the show, suggested this guy from his acting class. When Williams showed up to audition, something magical happened. Asked to take a seat, Williams sat on his head in the chair. Gary Marshall later explained his casting decision with perfect simplicity. He was the only alien who auditioned. The cast was astounded watching Williams improvise the entire Mork persona on the spot. They invited everyone around the studio to come watch. Network executives came to see what the fuss was about. And here's the remarkable part. A contract for Williams to star in his own spin-off series was prepared and signed just 4 days later. Mork Mindy premiered in September 1978, only 7 months after Williams' Happy Days debut. The network was so confident in Williams that they started production without a treatment or pilot episode. And they were right to be confident. The show finished its first season ranked number 3 in the Nielsen ratings, actually higher than its parent show, Happy Days at number 4. Williams' manic energy was so unpredictable that it changed the technical side of sitcoms. Gary Marshall's son, Scott, later explained, "The sitcom up until then was always 3 cameras. They had to add a 4th just to keep up with Williams. Scripts were shorter than normal, with notes simply specifying, 'Robin will do something here.' The show's ratings eventually declined after ABC moved it to a more competitive time slot, and it ended after 4 seasons. But by then, Robin Williams was a star, launching a film career that would make him one of the most beloved performers of his generation. All from one guest spot where he sat on his head. 5. Jaleel White as Steve Urkel, Family Matters. Now let's jump to 1989, and a character who was never supposed to exist beyond a single episode. Family Matters was a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, originally designed to focus on the Winslow family, a black middle-class family living in Chicago. Harriet Winslow had appeared on Perfect Strangers as an elevator operator, and the show was built around her family. Then, midway through the first season, in episode 12 titled Laura's First Date, a nerdy neighbor named Steve Urkel showed up to take Laura Winslow on a date. He was supposed to appear in that one episode. That's it. One and done. But something happened during taping. The live studio audience, including, as one source noted, some frat boys, found this 12-year-old kid absolutely hilarious. The reaction was so strong that the writers brought him back. By the season 2 premiere, Jaleel White had joined the main cast, and eventually this one-time guest character became the show's main protagonist. The transformation was dramatic. Steve Urkel's catchphrase, "Did I do that?" became a cultural phenomenon. There was an Urkel dance that originated in a season 2 episode. There was Urkel breakfast cereal. There was an Urkel doll. Milton Bradley released a board game called Do the Urkel in 1991. White was so dominant that he eventually wrote several episodes himself. At age 19, he wrote the series' highest-rated episode of that year. The show ran for 9 seasons and 215 episodes, making it the 3rd longest-running live-action American sitcom with a predominantly African-American cast. But this kind of seismic shift in a show's focus doesn't come without complications. Multiple cast members later discussed resentment over White dominating the show. Jo Marie Payton, who played Harriet, said White was a young kid with a chip on his shoulder at times. The character of Judy Winslow, the youngest daughter, simply vanished in season 4, without explanation, reportedly due to tensions. White himself later reflected on the experience. In a 1999 interview, he famously said, "If you ever see me do that character again, take me out and put a bullet in my head and put me out of my misery." He later clarified to Vanity Fair in 2011 that the quote was taken out of context, explaining that he loved playing the characters, but was maturing and retarding my own growth as a man by staying in the role. It's the complicated reality of becoming a breakout star. The audience loved Urkel so much that he consumed everything else. But without him, Family Matters probably wouldn't have lasted 9 seasons. 4. Kelsey Grammer as Frasier Crane. Cheers to Frasier. Here's a record that's hard to beat, playing the same character on television for over 20 years. And it almost didn't happen, because Kelsey Grammer was only supposed to stick around for 6 episodes. In 1984, the hit NBC sitcom Cheers needed a love interest for Diane Chambers after her breakup with Sam Malone. The creators wanted someone who represented her romantic and intellectual ideal, basically the opposite of Sam. They originally wanted John Lithgow, but he wasn't available. So Mandy Patinkin, Grammer's Broadway co-star and Juilliard classmate, recommended this guy he knew. Grammer was supposed to appear for just 6 episodes, but his performance impressed the producers so much that he became a regular cast member, staying on Cheers until its final season in 1993. When Cheers ended, the creators initially had no intention of spinning off Frasier Crane. They were actually worried a spin-off might fail. Their original plan was to cast Grammer as a completely different character, a paraplegic millionaire resembling Malcolm Forbes. That idea was deemed unsuitable and scrapped, so they returned to Frasier, but decided to move him out of Boston to avoid any resemblance to Cheers. They relocated him to Seattle and built the new show around his radio psychiatry career and his family. This required a major retcon. Cheers had established Frasier as an only child, but Frasier introduced a brother named Niles and a father named Martin. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Frasier won a record-tying 5 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Comedy Series and took home 37 Emmys overall, breaking the record previously held by The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Grammer himself won 4 Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series in 1994, 1995, 1998, and 2004, tying the record with Carol O'Connor, Michael J. Fox, and Jim Parsons. By 2001, he had negotiated a salary of $700,000 per episode, briefly becoming the highest-paid television actor in the United States. And here's a piece of TV history. Grammer became the first actor ever to receive Emmy nominations for the same character on 3 different series. He was nominated for Cheers, for a guest appearance on Wings, and for Frasier. Those original 6 episodes turned into 2 decades. A minor love interest for a supporting character became one of the most acclaimed comedic performances in television history. 3. James Marsters. As Spike, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sometimes a character breaks out not because the audience loves them, but because the audience loves to hate them. And then, something strange happens, and you start just loving them. When James Marsters auditioned for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he was called in at the very last minute. The show had been searching for someone to play the vampire Spike for months, and was just 3 days from filming. As Marsters put it, creator Joss Whedon basically told the casting director to scrape the bottom of the barrel and see what he found. Marsters walked in with supreme confidence. "I walked in there thinking I was the stuff," he later recalled, swaggering around among other Spikes, and started doing Shakespeare. They all pulled back, and I told them, "Can't do that? Good luck in there. It was my role." The original plan was for Spike to be Drusilla's boy toy for 5 episodes, as Marsters described it.
"Yeah, he's the big noise in these parts, anointed and all that."
And then Angel was going to kill him off. But something happened. Audiences couldn't help but enjoy Spike, even when he was being villainous. Fan response was overwhelming, and studio executives started pushing for more episodes featuring the British punk vampire. This did not please everyone. Joss Whedon, according to Marsters, originally resisted Spike's popularity. Marsters told one interviewer that Whedon made it very clear he did not want the show to be taken over by another romantic vampire, because, to Joss, vampires were supposed to be ugly. Whedon reportedly expressed anger about the studio demands, and even promised to kill the character off. The writers were caught in a difficult position. They had a mandate to include Spike, but struggled to figure out what to do with him after he'd outlived his purpose as a major villain. In Season 4 alone, the character alternated between being a villain, a victim of the Initiative, a snarky companion of the Scoobies, and a henchman for the big bad named Adam. But audiences didn't care about the behind-the-scenes struggles. They loved Spike. And Marsters, who had been a struggling theater actor, suddenly found himself with steady work. As he put it, "The thing that stood out on my first day on the Buffy set was the dawning realization that I wasn't going to be poor anymore. I had been a theater actor for so long." Spike remained on Buffy through the series finale, eventually getting a soul and sacrificing himself heroically, and then continued on the spin-off Angel. The character who was supposed to die after 5 episodes lasted nearly a decade. 2. Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton, Family Ties. Here's a case where the audience didn't just fall in love with a guest star. They completely hijacked the show's premise. When Family Ties premiered in 1982, it was pitched to NBC as Hip Parents, Square Kids. The show was supposed to be about Stephen and Elise Keaton, former hippies navigating parenthood in Reagan's America. The stars were Meredith Baxter and Michael Gross. Their oldest son, Alex, was a supporting character, a young Republican who was meant to represent generational conflict. Creator Gary David Goldberg wasn't even sold on Michael J. Fox at first. Fox's first audition was deemed terrible because he came across as too smart-assish. But Fox came back with a different approach and won the role. Then came the 4th episode. The audience reacted so positively to Alex that everything changed. The kids, Alex in particular, began gaining more focus until Alex became the show's center. Baxter reportedly experienced disappointment as the show she thought would focus on her character shifted dramatically. What made this particularly interesting is that Goldberg never intended Alex to be sympathetic. As he later explained, "With Alex, I did not think I was creating a sympathetic character. Those were not traits that I aspired to and didn't want my kids to aspire to." But Fox made it work. At the end of Family Ties' run, the New York Times described Alex as greed with the face of an angel. Goldberg acknowledged the phenomenon. Michael J. Fox would make things work, and the audience would simply not access the darker side of what he's actually saying. Fox went on to win the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a comedy series 3 consecutive times in 1986, 1987, and 1988. The network placed Family Ties right behind The Cosby Show on Thursday nights, and it became the second highest-rated show on television. And here's a detail that says a lot about Fox's character. Despite becoming the breakout star, he never asked to have his billing changed. He remained listed 3rd in the credits. He never missed time holding out for a bigger salary. He never, as the producers noted, behaved remotely like a prima donna. Shortly before winning the role, Fox's father had actually written him a letter encouraging him to give up on acting because he was struggling so much. A few weeks later, Fox was taking the bus to work every day because he didn't have a car. And then Alex P. Keaton changed everything. 1. Estelle Getty as Sophia Petrillo. The Golden Girls. The Golden Girls pilot was filmed on April 17, 1985, and something unusual happened during taping. The original pilot featured a cast of 5. The 3 main ladies plus a gay cook and butler named Coco, played by Charles Levin. But there was also this elderly mother character, Sophia Petrillo, who was supposed to be an occasional guest star, not a regular cast member. During filming, the show's writers, producers, and NBC representatives all noticed something: the audible audience response to Estelle Getty's performance.
Women like me don't grow on trees.
Too bad, we could use the shade.
Even in her limited scenes, Sophia was stealing the show. Getty had been cast largely because of her acclaimed performance as Harvey Fierstein's mother in the Broadway production of Torch Song Trilogy, a role Fierstein had created specifically for her. She had struggled for decades to gain notice in the entertainment industry, working theater circuits while raising two sons. Her breakthrough in Torch Song Trilogy came when she was nearly 60 years old. After the Golden Girls pilot performed well, the producers made a decision. Getty would become a regular cast member. But that created a problem. There wasn't enough weekly airtime for a regular cast of 5, especially since the writers noticed that most of the main interaction between the women occurred in the kitchen while preparing and eating food. Having a live-in cook made that awkward. Coco was written out, and Sophia was written in. Here's the thing that made Sophia essential. She made the other 3 characters seem young by comparison. Disney's Michael Eisner explained it perfectly. Estelle Getty made our 3 women into girls, and that was, to me, what made it seem like it could be a contemporary, young show. There's an ironic twist to all this. Getty wore heavy makeup, thick glasses, and a white wig to play the 80-year-old Sophia. The transformation took 3 hours. But in reality, Estelle Getty was actually 1 year younger than B. Arthur, who played her daughter Dorothy. Getty won the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series in 1988 and received 7 nominations total. The Golden Girls won the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series twice and ranked in the Nielsen Top 10 for all but its final season. The character became so popular that Getty reprised the role across multiple shows, including Empty Nest, The Golden Palace, Blossom, and Nurses. She was the only actress from the original Golden Girls to appear as a main cast member in all 3 connected series. Conclusion. So what do all these stories have in common? First, there's the unexpected audience reaction. In every case, something happened during filming or taping that nobody predicted. The crowd went wild for Fonzie. The frat boys laughed at Urkel. The audience responded audibly to Sophia. Executives literally came to the set to see what Robin Williams was doing. Second, there's chemistry. Kelsey Grammer impressed the Cheers producers with his performance. James Marsters clicked with Juliet Landau. Michael J. Fox made an unsympathetic character likable through sheer charisma. And third, and maybe most importantly, there were producers willing to throw out their original plans. Gary Marshall pivoted Happy Days around Fonzie. Gary David Goldberg let Alex P. Keaton take over Family Matters. The Golden Girls producers cut a character they'd already filmed to make room for Sophia. Television history is full of shows that stuck rigidly to their original vision and faded away. The shows we've talked about today survived because someone recognized that the magic was happening somewhere unexpected and they were smart enough to follow it. Henry Winkler once recalled how ABC gave him a VCR while everyone else got wallets. That's Hollywood telling you in no uncertain terms, you matter now. But what's remarkable about so many of these performers is that they didn't let it go to their heads. Michael J. Fox never asked for better billing. Henry Winkler argued against renaming the show after his character. Kelsey Grammer kept showing up even through personal struggles that could have derailed everything. These weren't just breakout characters. They were performers who understood that being the reason a show succeeds is both a gift and a responsibility. The next time you're watching a sitcom and some supporting character walks in and steals every scene they're in, pay attention. You might be watching television history in the making, because sometimes the person who saves the show is the one nobody planned for.